Gordon, Bane has escaped.
Human beings were not shaped in conditions of endless ease. The blood in your body comes from people who had to move, solve, hunt, carry, build, endure, adapt, risk, and learn through contact with pressure. They did not have perfect answers before they acted. They experimented because survival demanded it. A sharper tool, a safer fire, a stronger shelter, a better route, a smarter way to organize a group, a new method for planting, fighting, healing, building, protecting. Civilization did not rise from people trying to avoid all strain. It rose because generation after generation entered uncertainty and pulled something useful out of it. That is the insult in modern avoidance. A man inherits the results of ancient courage, then uses those results to become passive. He enjoys the house built by discomfort, while refusing to lay one brick of his own. The soul needs friction because friction reveals shape. Without resistance, a man can believe anything about himself. He can think he is disciplined until hunger questions him. He can think he is brave until rejection stands near him. He can think he is focused until silence removes every distraction. He can think he is spiritual until delay tests his patience. Pressure is not always punishment. Sometimes it is measurement. Sometimes it is the only honest mirror left. A life arranged around avoiding difficulty removes the very conditions that would tell a man who he actually is. He becomes protected from truth, and that protection feels pleasant until weakness starts making decisions for him. The body becomes an argument against his claims. The mind becomes crowded and unstable. The future starts shrinking because every higher path requires a level of discomfort he has trained himself to treat as danger. Nietzsche warned against the spirit that wants only safety, only pleasure, only a life without sharp edges. He saw that a person can become smaller through the constant pursuit of ease, not because ease is evil, but because a life without challenge stops demanding greatness from the one living it. The stronger path asks for self-overcoming. That phrase is not decoration. It means the current version of you must be confronted, disciplined, and surpassed. The old appetite must lose authority. The old fear must be dragged into daylight. The old weakness must stop being protected like a wounded king. A man does not rise by arranging the world so nothing presses against him. He rises by meeting the pressure and forcing it to carve him. What refuses to be challenged remains undeveloped. What remains undeveloped eventually becomes the master. A man addicted to ease will eventually call every demand unfair. Work will feel oppressive. Discipline will feel extreme. Responsibility will feel heavy. Strong people will seem obsessive because their standards expose what he has allowed. He may begin mocking the very things that would rescue him. Training becomes vanity. Saving money becomes boring. Learning a skill becomes too hard. Waking early becomes unnecessary. Sacrifice becomes unhealthy. This is how weakness protects itself with opinions. It does not say, "I am afraid to pay the price." It says, "That price is stupid." It does not say, "I have lost command over myself." It says, "I am just living my life." The language changes, but the result does not. A man can defend his comfort beautifully while his life slowly becomes evidence against him. Experimentation is the forgotten muscle. A man who never experiments starts believing his current limits are permanent. He thinks he cannot learn because he has not learned recently. He thinks he has no discipline because he has not trained discipline directly. He thinks his life has no direction because he has spent too long consuming other people's direction. The way out is not a grand speech. It is contact. Try the thing seriously enough to be corrected by reality. Train long enough for the body to answer honestly. Build a small project and let the market, audience, page, customer, mirror, scale, or bank account tell you the truth. A man who experiments gains data. A man who stays comfortable gains theories. Data can be used. Theories often become wallpaper inside a prison. The practical rule is severe. Make discomfort useful and make ease earned. Do not remove all pleasure like a fool trying to impress himself with misery. That path usually breaks and becomes another excuse. Instead, place demand before relief. Train before entertainment. Work before scrolling. Prayer before panic. Learning before opinions. Order before reward. Give the first force of the day to the life you claim to want, not to the machines designed to harvest your attention. When the body asks for softness too early, deny it without drama. When the mind asks for escape before effort, treat the request as a symptom, not a command. Slowly, the inner government changes. Pleasure stops being king and becomes a servant. Rest becomes recovery, not retreat. Ease becomes something you use, not something that uses you. A man should build controlled hardship into his week, the way a fortress builds walls before war. Hard training, focused work, silence without stimulation, honest self-audit, difficult conversations, financial restraint, skill practice, service and solitude all sharpen different parts of him. None of these need to be theatrical. The strongest changes often look plain. A clean meal when craving wants control. A completed hour when distraction begins bargaining. A cold walk when the body wanted laziness. A truthful sentence spoken calmly instead of swallowed for convenience. These are small crossings, but they rebuild command. The ancestral part of you does not need luxury as much as it needs proof that you can still meet resistance and not fold. Each chosen hardship tells the nervous system that life does not have to be easy for you to remain upright. Comfort becomes poison when it convinces a man that peace means never being disturbed. Real peace is not the absence of demand, it is the presence of command inside demand. A weak man needs everything arranged gently before he can function. A stronger man carries order into pressure. That kind of strength does not appear through wishing. It is earned through repeated contact with things the old self would have avoided. If you keep choosing softness, expect softness to speak through your body, your work, your habits, your courage, and your future. If you choose useful strain, expect something cleaner to rise. Not instantly, not loudly, but steadily, a more direct gaze, a body that obeys, a mind less desperate for escape, a life with fewer hidden negotiations. That is what returns when ease stops ruling. So stop treating comfort like a harmless preference. It is shaping you every day. The question is whether it is serving recovery or feeding decay. Your ancestors did not hand you blood built through storms so you could become helpless inside a room full of conveniences. They crossed hunger, cold, danger, uncertainty, and loss so life could reach you. Now your task is not to worship the past, but to honor the principle that built it. In the 14th century, an Arab historian named Ibn Khaldun observed a cycle so precise it reads like a law of nature. Hardy tribes from the desert, bound together by fierce cohesion and forged by brutal conditions, would conquer the soft, wealthy cities that had grown weak and comfortable. They took everything through sheer strength and unity, but then he traced what happened next. Generation by generation, and what he found should chill every man who dreams of ease. By the third generation, the conquerors had adopted the very luxuries of the people they defeated, and their strength collapsed, and new hard tribes rose from the desert to conquer them in turn. Understand the mechanism Khaldun uncovered, because it is not about tribes at all. It is about human nature itself. The first generation is forged by hardship, hard men made by hard conditions, and they win. The second generation remembers the struggle, having watched their fathers bleed for what they have, so they retain some of the edge. But the third generation is born into comfort, knows only the luxuries, has never tasted the hardship that built the family's strength, and they are soft, and they lose everything. Comfort does not just weaken, it destroys, on a timeline so predictable that Khaldun could map it across centuries of rising and falling powers. Here is the psychological truth beneath the historical pattern, and it applies directly to you. Human beings adapt to their conditions, growing strong in response to demand and weak in response to ease, which means comfort is not a reward your strength gets to keep, but a condition that actively erodes it. Remove the challenge and the capacity built to meet it begins to atrophy, the same way a muscle wastes when it stops being used. This is why men who achieve their dreams so often lose themselves afterward, because the achievement removed the very pressure that made them who they were, and without that pressure, the strength simply drains away. See how this plays out in the lives of individuals, not just civilizations. The man who claws his way out of poverty, and then, comfortable at last, watches his children grow up soft, entitled, incapable of the struggle that built him. The founder who fights ferociously to build his company, and then having won, loses the hunger that drove him and slowly declines. The pattern Khaldun saw in tribes repeats in families and in single lifetimes because the force behind it is not historical but human, and no one is exempt from it, least of all the man who believes his comfort is well-deserved rest. Recognize the trap you are walking into, because it is baited with everything you want. The comfort you are chasing is not a safe harbor, but a slow poison, pleasant going down, destructive over time. And the more successfully you pursue your goals, the more exposed you become to the softness that will unmake you. This is the cruel paradox at the heart of achievement, that winning creates the conditions for losing, that the ease you earn is the thing that erodes the strength you earned it with. The men who understand this are the only ones who survive their own success, because they see the danger hidden inside the reward. Understand what the survivors do differently, because it is the whole lesson. They refuse to let comfort soften them, even when they have every reason to relax. They manufacture hardship deliberately, keeping themselves under voluntary pressure long after life stops forcing it on them, choosing difficulty on purpose so that the strength built by hardship never has a chance to drain away. They know that the desert forged them and that the city will destroy them, so they carry the desert with them into the city, imposing on themselves the challenges that circumstances no longer impose. This is how a man escapes Khaldun's law, by never allowing himself the total comfort that begins the decline.
Rome's enemies did not create the weakness, they exposed it. That is the part people miss, because collapse is easier to understand when it has a visible villain at the gate. A foreign army, a rival, a betrayal, a disaster, a recession, a breakup, a failure, a sickness, a sudden humiliation. These things look like the cause because they arrive loudly. The deeper damage usually arrived quietly long before that. The standard slipped, the appetite became lazy, the discipline became negotiable. The body softened, The mind grew entitled. Duty started feeling heavy. Pleasure started feeling deserved before anything had been earned. By the time the final blow came, the structure was already weakened from inside. That is how a man falls as well. He points to the moment everything broke, but the breaking had been rehearsed for years in smaller choices he kept excusing. A life rarely collapses in one dramatic scene. It loses strength through comfort that looks harmless while it is happening. One skipped demand becomes easier to repeat. One indulgence becomes a pattern. One cowardly silence becomes a personality. One excuse becomes a private law. A man tells himself he is resting, but the rest never makes him stronger. He tells himself he is only enjoying life, yet enjoyment begins replacing construction. He says he will return to discipline tomorrow. Then tomorrow becomes a storage room for every responsibility he does not want to face today. Nothing appears urgent enough to scare him. That is the danger. Decay often feels peaceful at first. The enemy inside comfort does not kick the door down. It sits in the chair, speaks softly, and convinces a man that the warning signs are just stress. The barbarian in a man's life may not look like a person. It may arrive as a crisis that finally reveals what comfort had been doing in secret. A hard month exposes financial softness. A health scare exposes years of disrespect toward the body. Rejection exposes a confidence that was only performance. Loneliness exposes friendships built on distraction rather than depth. A failed opportunity exposes the skill he kept pretending he would build later. The event gets blamed because the event is painful, but the event only delivers the invoice. Comfort created the debt. A man should be careful before saying life suddenly turned against him. Often life has merely stopped covering the consequences. The soft years do not disappear. They collect interest. When the bill arrives, it feels brutal because the payments were ignored for too long. Civilizations fall when the virtues that built them become too inconvenient for the people who inherit the rewards. The builder accepts sacrifice because nothing has been secured yet. The inheritor mistakes security for nature. He enjoys the walls without understanding the hands that raised them. He walks through gates paid for by blood, patience, hunger, discipline, and risk, then begins to treat demand as oppression. A man can do the same inside his own body, home, work, and mind. His earlier ambition creates a little stability. Then that stability seduces him into softness. He wins enough to relax, then relaxes enough to become vulnerable. This is one of success's colder traps. The first victory can become the beginning of decline if a man uses it as permission to stop becoming sharp. Comfort corrupts judgment because it changes what a man considers normal. At first, he knows the difference between recovery and laziness. After enough soft choices, the line begins to blur. Discipline starts looking extreme because his own baseline has dropped. Serious people begin to irritate him. Their intensity feels like an accusation. Their focus makes his excuses harder to enjoy. Their results threaten the story he tells himself about why he has not moved. To protect his image, he may start calling them obsessed, lucky, privileged, fake, boring, or unbalanced. This is how decline defends itself. It does not always argue for weakness directly. It attacks strength until weakness feels reasonable. A man who wants to survive himself must stay honest enough to respect the standard even when he is not living up to it yet. Ancient Rome became a warning because its fall was not only military. It was moral, economic, civic, spiritual, and psychological. The outer pressure mattered, but inner exhaustion made the pressure decisive. A man should study that pattern with cold attention. When the center weakens, every external hit becomes more dangerous. If the body is neglected, One injury can ruin months. When money is disordered, one emergency becomes a disaster. If the mind is undisciplined, one insult can poison a week. When faith or purpose is shallow, one delay can make life feel empty. The outside world does not need to be unusually cruel to defeat a man who has allowed the inside to become hollow. A strong center absorbs shocks. A weak center turns ordinary pressure into catastrophe. Everything around you is selling you the same dream, and the dream is a lie. Retire early, work less, reach the point where you never have to struggle again, where your days are soft and your effort is minimal, and life finally leaves you alone. This is the promise dangled in front of you constantly, the goal you have been taught to organize your entire life around. But watch what actually happens to the men who reach it, who win the easy life they were told to want, and you will see something the marketing never mentions. They do not find peace there. They find something closer to a slow unraveling, and they never understand why. Look at the man who finally makes it, who arrives at the comfortable life with nothing left to fight for. Within a year, he is drinking more than he used to. He picks fights over nothing, sabotages the good things he has, chases risks he does not need, feels a restlessness he cannot name gnawing at him despite having everything he was supposed to want. From the outside, it makes no sense. Because he won, he got the ease, he should be content. But he is quietly falling apart, and the reason is hidden in a truth about human beings that no one selling the easy life will ever tell you. Notice this same pattern in miniature, in your own comfortable weekends. The day with nothing to do that should feel like heaven somehow leaves you flat, irritable, vaguely empty by evening. You got exactly what you wanted, a day of pure ease, and it made you feel worse rather than better, and you cannot quite explain the disappointment. You fill the emptiness with distractions, with food, with scrolling, with anything to quiet the strange dissatisfaction that comfort produces. Something in you is not built for total ease, and the more of it you get, the louder that something protests, though you have never stopped to ask what it is trying to tell you. Here is what the science of the nervous system reveals, and it upends everything you have been taught to chase. Your body and brain were built by hundreds of thousands of years of hardship, engineered to function under challenge, to come alive in the face of difficulty, to require a certain amount of struggle the way your lungs require air. The whole system is calibrated for a demanding world, and when you remove the demand, when you engineer all the difficulty out of your days, the system does not relax into happiness. It starves. It begins to malfunction, searching desperately for the challenge it was designed to meet, and it will find that challenge somewhere, even if it has to manufacture it destructively. Understand what those self-destructive behaviors actually are, because they are not random, and they are not moral failures. The drinking, the gambling, the pointless conflicts, the manufactured drama, these are a starving nervous system creating artificial struggle to replace the real struggle that comfort removed. The man who has no genuine difficulty in his life will invent difficulty because his system demands it, and the difficulty he invents is almost always destructive, since he is no longer channeling that need into anything productive. His nervous system is screaming for challenge, and if he will not give it a real one, it will seize a fake one, and the fake ones ruin lives.